Sarah Martinez had always been different from the other kids in her small Texas town. While most girls her age spent their afternoons at dance classes or shopping at the local mall, Sarah could be found in her grandfather's backyard, carefully cleaning and maintaining an old hunting rifle that had been passed down through 3 generations of her family. The rifle itself was nothing special to look at. Its wooden stock was weathered and worn, with scratches and dents that told stories of countless hunting trips and practice sessions. The metal barrel had lost its original shine years ago, now bearing a dull patina that spoke of age and use. Most people who saw it would dismiss it as an outdated piece of equipment, hardly worth a second glance. Sarah's grandfather, Miguel, had been a decorated marksman in the military before settling down to become a rancher. He recognized something special in his granddaughter's steady hands and focused eyes. From the age of 12, he began teaching her the fundamentals of shooting: proper stance, breathing techniques, sight alignment, and most importantly, patience and respect for the weapon. The lessons took place every Saturday morning in the early hours before the Texas sun became unbearable. Miguel would set up targets at various distances, starting close and gradually moving them further away as Sarah's skills improved. He taught her that shooting wasn't just about pulling a trigger. It was about understanding wind patterns, calculating distances, controlling her heartbeat, and finding that perfect moment of stillness between breaths. By the time Sarah turned 16, she could consistently hit targets at distances that impressed even her grandfather. Her accuracy was remarkable, but her weapon of choice remained the same old rifle that others considered obsolete. She had grown attached to its familiar weight, the smooth action of its bolt, and the way it seemed to become an extension of her own body when she shouldered it. The trouble began when Sarah decided to join her high school's newly formed shooting club. The coach, Mr. Peterson, was a former competitive shooter who had high hopes for building a strong team. When Sarah showed up to the first practice with her grandfather's old rifle, the reaction was immediate and brutal. The other students, mostly boys who had expensive modern rifles with high-tech scopes and adjustable stocks, burst into laughter the moment they saw Sarah's weapon. Jake Thompson, whose father owned the largest sporting goods store in town, pointed at the rifle and announced loud enough for everyone to hear that Sarah had brought a museum piece to a shooting competition. "Is that thing even safe to fire?" mocked Ashley Chen, one of the few other girls on the team, who carried a sleek competition rifle that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "It looks like it belongs in a Western movie from the 1950 seconds. The laughter spread through the group like wildfire. Comments flew about how Sarah couldn't be serious about competing with such an outdated weapon. Some suggested she should stick to shooting tin cans in her backyard rather than embarrassing herself in actual competition. The mockery was relentless and cruel, with each student trying to come up with a more cutting remark than the last. Coach Peterson, while not participating in the ridicule, seemed skeptical about Sarah's chances of success with her chosen weapon. He explained that modern competitive shooting required precision equipment, advanced optics, and rifles specifically designed for accuracy. He suggested that Sarah might want to consider borrowing or purchasing a more suitable firearm if she was serious about being part of the team. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She had expected some surprise at her choice of weapon, but the level of ridicule was overwhelming. Part of her wanted to turn around and walk away, to avoid the humiliation of proving the doubters right. But another part of her, the part that had been shaped by countless hours of training with her grandfather, refused to back down. She remembered Miguel's words about how a true marksman's skill came from within, not from expensive equipment. He had often told her stories of legendary shooters who achieved incredible feats with basic weapons, relying on their training, determination, and mental toughness rather than technological advantages. The team's practice sessions became a constant source of stress for Sarah. Every time she missed a shot, the whispers and snickers would start. When she hit her targets, some teammates would claim it was just luck or suggest that the targets were too easy. The psychological pressure was intense, and Sarah found herself doubting her abilities for the first time in years. Her grandfather noticed the change in her demeanor during their Saturday practice sessions. Sarah seemed tense and frustrated, her normally smooth shooting rhythm disrupted by the negative voices echoing in her head. Miguel sat her down after a particularly difficult practice session and asked what was troubling her. When Sarah explained the situation at school, Miguel's weathered face grew serious. He understood the weight of peer pressure and the difficulty of standing alone against a crowd, but he also knew that his granddaughter possessed something that couldn't be bought in any sporting goods store: genuine skill, dedication, and the heart of a true competitor. Miguel shared stories from his military days about soldiers who had performed extraordinary feats with standard-issue equipment, while others with the latest gear had failed under pressure. He reminded Sarah that champions were made not by their tools, but by their preparation, mindset, and ability to perform when it mattered most. As the weeks passed, the mockery from Sarah's teammates only intensified. They began calling her rifle the antique, and making jokes about how she should donate it to a museum. Some even started a betting pool about how quickly she would quit the team or finally admit she needed better equipment. The situation reached its peak when the team received news about their first major competition. It would be held at the state level, with schools from across Texas sending their best shooters. The pressure was enormous, and Coach Peterson made it clear that only the most skilled team members would be selected to compete. During the team meeting where the competition was announced, Jake Thompson stood up and made a speech about how the team needed to present a professional image. He suggested that anyone with substandard equipment should consider whether they were truly ready to represent the school at such a high level. His words were clearly directed at Sarah, and the message was unmistakable. Ashley Chen added her support to Jake's comments, pointing out that other teams would likely have the latest equipment and that the school's reputation could suffer if they appeared unprepared or outdated. The pressure on Sarah to conform or quit was now coming from multiple directions, and it seemed like the entire team had turned against her. That evening, Sarah sat in her room holding her grandfather's rifle, running her fingers along its worn stock. She thought about all the Saturday mornings spent learning to shoot, all the patient instruction from Miguel, and all the hours she had dedicated to perfecting her skills. She also thought about the cruel laughter of her teammates and the growing doubt in Coach Peterson's eyes. The weight of the decision pressed down on her shoulders. She could give in to the pressure, admit defeat, and either quit the team or find a way to get a modern rifle like everyone else wanted. Or she could stand her ground, trust in her training, and prove that skill and determination mattered more than expensive equipment. The choice she made that night would determine not just her future with the shooting team, but her understanding of her own character and values. Sarah realized that this was about more than just a rifle or a competition. It was about who she was and what she believed in. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a renewed sense of determination. She had made her choice during the long night of reflection, and she was going to stick with her grandfather's rifle, no matter what anyone said. But proving herself would require more than just determination. She needed to demonstrate her skills in a way that would silence the doubters, once and for all. Sarah threw herself into training with an intensity that surprised even Miguel. She arrived at their practice sessions earlier and stayed later, working on every aspect of her technique. She studied wind patterns more carefully, practiced shooting from different positions, and pushed herself to hit targets at greater distances than ever before. The old rifle became like a trusted partner, responding to her touch with increasing precision. At school, the mockery continued but with a different edge. Word had spread about the upcoming state competition, and students who weren't even on the shooting team began to take notice of Sarah's unusual choice of weapon. Some found it amusing that someone would be so stubborn about using outdated equipment, while others began to admire her determination to stick to her principles. The shooting team's practice sessions became increasingly competitive as Coach Peterson began evaluating who would make the cut for the state competition. He had decided to take only 6 shooters, and with 8 students on the team, 2 would be left behind. The pressure was intense, and everyone knew that performance in the upcoming practices would determine their fate. During these crucial practice sessions, Sarah began to demonstrate the results of her intensified training. Her groupings were consistently tight, her accuracy was improving, and she showed a calmness under pressure that impressed even Coach Peterson. However, the other team members attributed her good performance to luck or favorable conditions, refusing to acknowledge that her skills might be genuinely superior. Jake Thompson, feeling threatened by Sarah's improvement, began to escalate his psychological warfare. He started timing his practice shots to coincide with Sarah's, hoping to distract her with the sharp crack of his high-powered rifle. He would also make loud comments about equipment failures and safety concerns whenever Sarah was preparing to shoot. Ashley Chen took a different approach, spreading rumors about Sarah's family background and questioning whether she could handle the pressure of representing the school at a major competition. She suggested that Sarah's rural upbringing and unconventional training methods might not translate well to formal competitive shooting. The other team members followed Jake and Ashley's lead, creating an atmosphere of hostility that made every practice session feel like a battle. Sarah found herself shooting not just against targets, but against a wall of negativity and doubt that seemed to grow stronger each day. Coach Peterson watched these dynamics unfold with growing concern. While he appreciated healthy competition among team members, the situation was becoming toxic. He also couldn't ignore the fact that Sarah's performance was consistently strong, regardless of the weapon she used. Her fundamentals were solid. Her mental game was improving, and she showed a level of dedication that impressed him. One afternoon, Coach Peterson pulled Sarah aside after practice to discuss her situation privately. He acknowledged that she faced unique challenges on the team and asked how she was handling the pressure. Sarah responded with honesty, admitting that the constant mockery was difficult but that she was determined to prove herself through performance rather than words. Coach Peterson then surprised Sarah by sharing his own story. He revealed that early in his competitive career, he had faced similar challenges when other shooters looked down on him for his blue-collar background and inability to afford the most expensive equipment. He had learned that success in shooting sports, like in life, came down to preparation, mental toughness, and the ability to perform when it mattered most. This conversation marked a turning point in Sarah's relationship with her coach. While he still had concerns about her equipment choice, he began to see her as a serious competitor rather than a curiosity. He started offering her additional guidance and support, helping her refine her technique and prepare for the mental challenges of high-level competition. As the weeks progressed toward the team selection deadline, Sarah's performance continued to improve while some of her critics began to struggle under the mounting pressure. Jake Thompson, despite his expensive equipment and vocal confidence, started experiencing accuracy problems that he blamed on everything except his own preparation. Ashley Chen also showed signs of stress, becoming increasingly erratic in her shooting and defensive about her performance. The dynamic within the team began to shift subtly as some members started to respect Sarah's consistency and work ethic. Two junior members of the team, Marcus Williams and Destiny Rodriguez, began asking Sarah for advice about breathing techniques and mental preparation. They had noticed that Sarah seemed more relaxed and focused than the older team members who were desperately trying to secure their spots for the state competition. This support from the younger team members further angered Jake and Ashley, who saw their influence within the group beginning to wane. They intensified their efforts to undermine Sarah's confidence, but their attacks were becoming more obviously motivated by fear and jealousy rather than genuine concern for the team's success. The situation reached a critical point during a particularly important practice session that Coach Peterson had designated as a major evaluation. He announced that this would be one of the final opportunities for team members to demonstrate their readiness for state competition, and that scores from this practice would heavily influence his selection decisions. The pressure was enormous, and it showed in the performances of several team members. Jake Thompson, trying too hard to prove his superiority, rushed his shots and produced his worst grouping in weeks. Ashley Chen struggled with equipment problems that she attributed to the stress of the situation. Several other team members also performed below their usual standards. Sarah, however, seemed to thrive under the pressure. Her grandfather's training had prepared her for exactly these moments, when mental toughness mattered more than expensive equipment. She followed her established routine, controlled her breathing, and focused on the fundamentals that Miguel had drilled into her over countless practice sessions. When the smoke cleared and Coach Peterson tallied the scores, Sarah had produced the best performance of the day. Her grouping was tight, her accuracy was exceptional, and she had demonstrated the kind of consistency that wins competitions. The silence from her critics was deafening, but it didn't last long. Jake Thompson immediately accused Sarah of using modified ammunition or having her rifle illegally altered to improve its accuracy. He demanded that Coach Peterson inspect her equipment to ensure she wasn't gaining an unfair advantage. Ashley Chen supported this demand, suggesting that the team's integrity was at stake. Coach Peterson agreed to examine Sarah's rifle and ammunition, more to put the matter to rest than because he believed the accusations. His inspection revealed exactly what Sarah had claimed all along: a well-maintained but completely standard rifle with factory ammunition. There were no modifications, no special equipment, and no unfair advantages. The only difference was the skill and preparation of the shooter. This moment of vindication should have ended the controversy, but it only seemed to fuel more resentment from Sarah's critics. They began suggesting that the practice conditions had somehow favored her, or that her performance was an anomaly that wouldn't be repeated under real competition pressure. The tension within the team was now palpable, and Coach Peterson realized that he needed to make his selection decisions soon to prevent the situation from completely destroying team morale. He announced that final team selections would be made after one more practice session, scheduled for the following week. That practice session would be Sarah's final opportunity to prove that her success wasn't just luck, and her critics' last chance to demonstrate that their expensive equipment and loud confidence could translate into superior performance. The stage was set for a showdown that would determine not just who made the team, but whose philosophy about shooting sports would be validated. As Sarah prepared for this crucial practice, she reflected on how far she had come since that first day, when everyone laughed at her grandfather's old rifle. She had faced constant ridicule, weathered attempts to undermine her confidence, and proven her skills repeatedly under pressure. Now she stood on the verge of earning her place on the state competition team, but she knew the biggest test was still ahead. The night before the final practice, Sarah spent extra time cleaning and maintaining her rifle, just as her grandfather had taught her. She reviewed her mental preparation techniques and visualized successful shots under pressure. She knew that tomorrow would require her to summon every lesson Miguel had taught her and every ounce of determination she possessed. The stakes couldn't be higher, and Sarah understood that her performance would speak louder than any words could. Win or lose, she was determined to show everyone exactly what could be accomplished. With skill, dedication, and an old rifle that some people thought belonged in a museum. The morning of the final team selection practice arrived with an unusual tension hanging in the air. Word had spread throughout the school about the ongoing drama within the shooting team, and several students who normally wouldn't care about such things showed up to watch the practice session. Even some teachers had gathered to witness what many were calling the ultimate test of Sarah's controversial choice to stick with her grandfather's old rifle. Coach Peterson had designed a challenging course of fire that would test every aspect of the shooter's abilities. The competition would include precision shooting at multiple distances, timed events that would pressure the participants, and a final challenge that would push even the most skilled marksmen to their limits. He wanted to be absolutely certain that his team selections were based on ability to perform under the most demanding conditions. As the team members prepared their equipment, the contrast between Sarah and her competitors was more obvious than ever. Jake Thompson had brought not just his expensive rifle, but also a complete kit of accessories including a custom shooting rest, premium ammunition, and a scope that cost more than most people's cars. Ashley Chen's setup was equally impressive, featuring the latest in competitive shooting technology. Sarah quietly prepared her grandfather's rifle with the same methodical care she had learned from Miguel. She checked the action, verified her sight alignment, and loaded her ammunition with the practiced efficiency of someone who had performed these tasks thousands of times. To an outside observer, her preparation looked almost primitive compared to the high-tech rituals of her teammates. The first stage of the competition involved precision shooting at 100 yards, with each shooter taking 10 carefully aimed shots at small targets. This was considered Sarah's strongest discipline, where her hundreds of hours of practice with Miguel would hopefully pay off. The shooting order was determined randomly, and Sarah found herself positioned in the middle of the lineup. Jake Thompson shot first, and his performance was solid if unspectacular. His expensive equipment performed as advertised, producing a tight grouping that would have been excellent by most standards. Ashley Chen followed with a similarly strong showing, her high-tech rifle and precision optics delivering the accuracy they promised. The pressure was mounting for Sarah to match their performance with her seemingly inferior equipment. When Sarah's turn came, the gathered crowd fell silent. She approached the firing line with calm confidence, shouldering her rifle with the fluid motion of someone completely comfortable with her weapon. She took her position, controlled her breathing, and began to fire with a steady rhythm, that spoke of countless hours of practice. Her first shot struck the center of the target with precision that drew surprised murmurs from the crowd. Her second shot followed in almost exactly the same location, then her third, fourth, and fifth. By the time she had completed her string of 10 shots, Sarah had produced a grouping that was noticeably tighter than anything her competitors had achieved. The silence that followed Sarah's performance was profound. Even her harshest critics couldn't deny what they had just witnessed. Jake Thompson stared at the target in disbelief, while Ashley Chen began checking her own equipment, as if searching for an explanation for why her expensive gear hadn't performed better. But this was only the beginning of the day's competition. Coach Peterson announced that they would move to the second stage, which involved shooting at moving targets under time pressure. This was designed to test not just accuracy, but the ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions and perform under stress. The moving target stage proved challenging for everyone. Jake Thompson, despite his confident demeanor, struggled with the timing required to hit the moving targets consistently. His expensive scope, while excellent for precision shooting, seemed to hinder his ability to quickly acquire and track moving targets. Ashley Chen fared somewhat better, but still missed several shots that left her clearly frustrated. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the challenge with the same calm focus she had shown earlier. Her grandfather had taught her to shoot at moving game during their hunting trips, and she understood the principles of lead and timing that were required for success. Using her rifle's simpler iron sights, she was able to track the targets more intuitively than competitors who relied heavily on magnified optics. Sarah's performance on the moving targets was exceptional. She hit target after target with a consistency that amazed the spectators and clearly frustrated her competitors. Her total score for this stage was the highest of the day, further cementing her position as a serious contender for the state team. The final stage of the competition was the most challenging yet. Coach Peterson had set up a complex course that required shooters to engage targets at various distances while moving between different shooting positions. This test was designed to simulate real competition conditions where adaptability and mental toughness were just as important as pure shooting skill. By this point, the psychological pressure on all the competitors was intense. The gathered crowd had grown larger as word spread about the remarkable competition taking place. Some of Sarah's harshest critics were beginning to look nervous as they realized that her success wasn't just luck, but the result of superior preparation and skill. Jake Thompson's performance in the final stage revealed the weakness that had been hidden behind his expensive equipment and loud confidence. Under extreme pressure, with everyone watching, his shooting became erratic and inconsistent. The stress caused him to overthink every shot, and his scores suffered dramatically. His expensive rifle couldn't compensate for the mental game he was losing. Ashley Chen also struggled with the psychological pressure of the moment. Her normally precise technique became hurried and sloppy as she tried to match Sarah's performance. The more she forced her shots, the worse they became, creating a downward spiral that destroyed her confidence and her scores. When Sarah's turn for the final stage arrived, the tension in the air was electric. This would be her ultimate test, the moment when all her training and preparation would either pay off or fall short. The gathered crowd watched in silence as she approached the starting position with her grandfather's old rifle. Sarah began the course with the same methodical approach she had used all day. She moved smoothly between positions, engaged targets at different distances with consistent accuracy, and maintained her composure despite the enormous pressure of the moment. Her shots rang out with steady precision, each one finding its mark with the reliability that had become her trademark. As Sarah progressed through the challenging course, something remarkable happened. The crowd that had initially gathered to watch her potential humiliation began to cheer for her success. Students who had never shown interest in shooting sports found themselves caught up in the drama of watching someone prove that skill and determination could triumph over equipment and money. When Sarah fired her final shot of the day, hitting a difficult target at long range with a precision that left no doubt about her abilities, the crowd erupted in spontaneous applause. Even some of her former critics found themselves clapping, unable to deny the excellence of what they had just witnessed. Coach Peterson tallied the final scores with barely concealed amazement. Sarah had not only earned her place on the state team, she had posted the highest overall score of the day by a significant margin. Her performance with the old rifle had been superior to everyone else's performance with their modern equipment. The announcement of the team selections was almost anticlimactic. Sarah's name was called first, recognizing her as the top performer and team captain for the state competition. The other selections followed, but the day clearly belonged to the girl who had been mocked for her choice of weapon. In the aftermath of the competition, Jake Thompson approached Sarah with grudging respect. He admitted that he had underestimated her abilities and apologized for his earlier behavior. Ashley Chen also offered her congratulations, acknowledging that Sarah had earned her success through superior preparation and skill. The transformation in how Sarah was viewed by her peers was immediate and dramatic. Students who had mocked her rifle now asked about her training methods and wanted to learn from her experience. Teachers praised her for demonstrating that success came from hard work and dedication rather than expensive equipment. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Sarah called her grandfather to share the news of her success. Miguel's voice filled with pride as he listened to her describe the day's events. He reminded her that the most important victory wasn't against her competitors, but against the doubt and negativity that had tried to convince her to abandon her principles. As Sarah prepared for the state competition in the weeks that followed, she carried with her more than just her grandfather's rifle. She carried the confidence that comes from overcoming adversity, the knowledge that skill and preparation matter more than equipment and money, and the understanding that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to simply perform when it matters most. The state competition itself would present new challenges and stronger opponents, but Sarah approached it with the same calm confidence that had served her so well. She had already proven the most important point, that a determined individual with proper training could achieve excellence regardless of what others thought about their equipment or methods. The story of Sarah's triumph spread far beyond her small Texas town, inspiring young shooters across the country who faced similar challenges. Her success became a reminder that in any field, true achievement comes not from having the best tools, but from developing the best skills and maintaining the determination to use them when it matters most. The old rifle that had once been the source of mockery and doubt had become a symbol of something far more powerful. The idea that excellence could be achieved by anyone willing to put in the work, regardless of their circumstances or equipment. And Sarah Martinez had proven that sometimes the most devastating shot you can fire is the one that silences all the doubters.